I did ask that in future reference if Pastor is going to get sick, that he gives me a little more notice before, but no. All right. I love warm weather. Anyone else out here love warm weather, like when it starts to heat up? I always have. When I was a kid, you just find me outside playing all the time. Granted, we didn't have all the technology kids deal with today, so I don't know what I would have been like if I had had that at my hands. But back then, I just loved being outside, climbing trees, getting dirty. When I got a little bit older, I had some buddies, and we really liked to go canoeing or kayaking whenever we got a chance. There's a place just right up the road called Blues Canoes, and every so often, multiple times throughout the summer season, at least a couple of us would go and do some kayaking or canoeing, and they had like a 6-mile ride or an 8-mile ride, and we just loved it. On the water, we'd take our time, and we'd stop and swim. It just was a fun day out there. So this one instance, we thought it'd be fun to just get a huge group of people together, just a huge group. I think we had maybe 12 or 15 of us that were all going to go, going to go canoe and kayak together. So we went down there, we paid, got in line, had to go through all the safety stuff, get our vests, all that fun stuff so that we could go, so that we could participate in canoe and kayak. So we get in the water, we're going, everything's going fine until one of my friends flips his canoe. And when they flipped that canoe, one of the guys hit his leg on something and is shouting like crazy. He thought he'd done some damage to it. Luckily, long term, found out that wasn't the case, but it obviously hurt. But just as making all of this noise. And so the rest of us are watching. One of us goes to try to grab the canoe because it's floating down the river because these guys are just swimming, holding on to a log, and it's going down. And not only is that canoe going down the river, but that just happened to be the one that was holding the cooler with all of our water and our pop in it. And so it's come open, and our pop and water, it's all going everywhere. It's just floating down the river. So we're shouting at each other, making a big commotion. A couple of us finally get that canoe back there. The others get loaded up on it. This is probably a 30 to 40-minute process because the canoe gets wedged in the bend of the river, so this water's pushing on. It's just a big to-do. So it takes us a lot of time. And in that time, we are so inwardly focused that we don't have any idea what's happening on the banks of the river because we're just worried about ourselves. We're just worried about that stuff that's happening right in front of us, what is affecting us directly, that chaos that's right in front of us. So we get everything loaded up. We get the two that were hurt or that flipped initially that we were worried were hurt. They're loaded up. They go down the river. Then me and one of my other friends that are in kayaks, we're the last ones. So we get in our stuff and we head out. We come around this bend, and there are probably 3 ambulances, a fire truck, police cars, tons of medical vehicles. I'm not sure if I ever shared this with my parents, so no one was hurt. It's okay. But just tons of flashing lights. And then there's this motorized boat coming up behind us. Well, the rest of our group's already gone, so just me and my one friend, and we're like, oh, crap, because I think we were probably 17, something along those lines. We may have been dishonest and said we were 18. I don't know. It was a long time ago. Luckily, I forgot that part. But so we have all these nerves going on in our own head, our own body state. But what we didn't realize, because we were so focused on ourselves and so focused on what was important to us that was right in front of us, that there were people that were watching and hearing us on the banks that were concerned as well with our situation. So concerned that they called 911 to try to get help for us. So we get pulled out. We are probably questioned for I don't know, an hour, it felt like. The rest of our group, they went ahead and enjoyed the rest of the day. They just went ahead and floated on down the river. They never pulled them out. They told us by the time they were done that we could start over if we wanted, but our group was so far gone that we didn't. Because, that had happened. The fun had kind of been destroyed for us. But what we could have done in this whole situation is if we'd just not been so inward focused, so just focused on our little piece and maybe looked to the banks of the river and saw that other people were trying to help us and communicated with them, that whole situation could have turned out different and it could have wasted a lot of time. But that's the problem, right, in life. Sometimes we worry so much about the stuff right in front of us, about the stuff that matters only to us, that we fail to see the bigger picture that's happening before us. God often asks his people to trust him when they can't see the full plan, when they can't see the big picture. Our faith grows when we believe that God is working behind what we currently understand. Romans 8, chapter 8, verse 28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Doesn't that make you feel good to hear that? That in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. It sounds good, right? But how often do we lose sight of that in life? That when bad things are going on or stuff that makes us operate in a way that we don't want to operate, that we forget that there's someone that has a bigger purpose, that sees a bigger picture, that loves us, and as long as we are acting in accordance to his purpose, is there for us and is going to help us work through some things. So sometimes life feels confusing because we only see one piece of that puzzle, while God sees the completed puzzle. What feels delayed, painful, or uncertain to us may actually be part of God's greater purpose in our lives. Think of this illustration. So if I took a beautiful piece of art, it's a big piece of art, and I put it straight in your face right here, all you can see are those little brush strokes probably right in front of you. You might be able to designate some colors. But then you pull back. Say it's Da Vinci's Last Supper painting. You pull back and it's beautiful. You see the big picture. You see everything that's been painted there, all the detail, all the people that are lined up, the activity that's happening in that art is there. But when it's right in front of your face, all you can see is that little spot. This morning, I want us to look at 3 instances in the Bible where people were forced to trust that there is a big picture, something more than what was just right in front of their face. The first instance I want to talk about is Abraham. See, Abraham had to trust God without seeing the outcome. We see in Genesis chapter 12, starting with verse 1, it says, "The Lord had said to Abram, 'Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you.' So Abram went out as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran." If we only look at verses 2 and 3, that seems like a pretty good deal, right? If we just look at 2 and 3, it says, "I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse them. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Don't those 2 verses sound wonderful? What amount of support and blessing is pouring out from the Lord. But you can't have those 2 verses without the one before it and the one after the Lord said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to a land I will show you, to a land to be named later. How hard is that? Leave everything you know, everyone that you're comfortable with, and go. And I will reveal to you at the right time where you are going to go. Oh. And then, not to mention, we find out in verse 4, how old is Abram? 75 years old. That means he's had 75 years of life where he's gotten comfortable, where he's built relationship, where he's built a family. And now he's told to leave that, to trust in God and his direction, to be faithful that God knows the big picture and that it's so much more than what he's seeing right in front of him. Faith means obeying before all the details are known. Whew, that's hard, right? Believing before all that. We want details. We are a world, we are a people who want to know everything we can. I mean, I don't have it with me, that little phone we carry around now, we can just about know anything we want to. Sometimes more than we need to know. But that wouldn't help Abraham, would it? There weren't going to be any details on that phone to tell him what's happening. See, we have to trust that there's a big picture that God is in control of. Hebrews 11:8 says, it was by faith Abraham obeyed God's call to go to another place God promised to give him. He left his own country, not knowing where he was to go. Abraham went out, and he didn't know where he was going. He had to trust the big picture. And he did. So what does this situation tell us? What does it show us? It shows us to trust God even when the directions are incomplete. Have you ever had somebody in the passenger seat when you're driving somewhere and they say, don't worry, I'll tell you where to turn? Does that drive you all crazy? Like you're like, no, I want to know the name of the street, at least give me some markers so that I can be comfortable in case you're not paying attention, so that I don't have to make 7 turns to get back to the one that I was supposed to make initially. But that's not the option sometimes in life. Sometimes we have to trust when the directions are incomplete. Obedience often comes before understanding, right? Sometimes it's through our obedience to God that we gain an understanding on what it is He wants us to do in life. But being the kind of people we are, that feels flipped, doesn't it? We want to know. We want to have a good understanding of the plan, and then we'll agree to be obedient to it. But that's not how faith works. That's not how God works. God's promises are bigger than our current comfort zone. God's promises are bigger than our comfort zone. And what you'll find as you're obedient to God, as you trust God and allow Him to direct your life, that your comfort zone will get a little bit bigger. We just have to know that God's promises are bigger than that. All right, another instance I'd like us to look at is with Moses. In Exodus chapter 14. Now, this is when Moses goes through the process. The Israelites are free, and he's leading them into the desert, and they get stuck at the Red Sea. I'm going to read through this chapter because I think it's important for us to hear all of God's words on this situation. Then the Lord says to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi. And I'm going to say these words really quick to make it sound like I know how to pronounce them, even though I'm not real certain on it. So it's okay to sometimes not know how to pronounce a word. That's what I'm telling you. I'm trying to make you feel comfortable with that. So tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi Hahiroth between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all of his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. So here we have the start. God knows. God sees the big picture. He knows what's going to happen. He is telling the Israelites to Moses to tell the Israelites to follow him, even though it seems like they're coming to a dead end. They're in the desert. They're coming right up to the Red Sea. The sea's in front of them. The Egyptians are behind them. They feel like they're in a mess. But the Israelites do what they're told. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, "What have we done? We have let Israelites go and have lost their services." They lost their slaves. They've suddenly have realized all this stuff that we've been using all these Israelite slaves for, we just let that go out the door, so we're going to chase them down. So he had his chariot made ready and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots along with all the chariots of Egypt and the officers all over all of them. When I read this scripture, it makes me think of the old nursery rhyme, all the king's horses and all the king's men. But this is more like all of Pharaoh's horses and all of Pharaoh's men couldn't get the Israelites back to Egypt again. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. So the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi Hahiroth, opposite Baal Zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. So again, the Lord's given them a plan, told them to trust him, and they're terrified. Because so often we allow fear to take over where faith should be conquering. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Moses answered the people, and this is the turn. Right? They're all a mess. But then Moses answers them. Moses answers the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again." Moses is trusting the big picture that he can't see because he has faith in his God, whereas the rest of the Israelites are struggling because all they can see is the chaos that is laid out right before them. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Well, that's still true today. The Lord will fight for us. We need to know when to be still and when he is directing us to move in the path that he has directed us to. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch your hand over the sea to divide the water so the Israelites can go through the sea on dry land. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all of his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies and the Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to the one side and light to the other side. So neither went near the other all night long. All of these pieces that Moses nor any of those Israelites could have known would be put together. Who would have ever guessed that the sea would be divided? And not only would the sea be divided, but they would walk across on dry land. Has anyone ever swam in the ocean or in a pond or a lake? When you get to the bottom, it's nothing, it's anything but dry. It's a muddy mess. But our God is so powerful. Not only did he divide the sea, but he dried the land so that there could be safe passage for the Israelites. And then he put a cloud that created darkness, a separation of darkness and light to further protect them as they went through. Whew. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving, and the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Even the Egyptians begin to realize they've got someone on their side that's way better than anything we've got. There's no success in this. Let's turn back. But guess what? Wheels are jammed. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and their horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and the horsemen. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea, not one of them survived. Not one. This huge army, huge, with weaponry, chariots, they don't stand a chance against God's big picture. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on the right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. Whew. I think I'd be feeling a little more faithful at the end of that day than the beginning of that day, right? Israel was trapped. God provided a way. In Exodus 14:13, I pointed out then, but just to put it out, Moses says to the people, to the Israelites, "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." What an attitude, what a belief, what a trust in God. So what does this show us? What does this show us? That fear focuses on obstacles in life. We often stop moving forward because we're so scared of the obstacles that are in our way. But faith focuses on God's ability. It focuses on God's ability, not ours. So when we see those same obstacles, we're not thinking about how does Daniel overcome this obstacle. We're having a faith that God is going to bring us through this obstacle. And what a difference that makes. Sometimes God asks us to stand still before he opens the sea. We have to be patient sometimes. Faith requires patience. Let God remove those obstacles from our lives rather than fearing them and allowing fear to change how we would have dealt with them ourselves. The third instance I want to look at is Jesus. Jesus trusted in the Father's plan. In Luke chapter 22, verses 39 through 34, it says, Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, pray that you will not fall into temptation. Pray that you will not fall into temptation. He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down, and prayed. Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. Father, if you are willing, take this from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. Jesus is hopeful God will take this pain from him, but willing to trust God's direction. Jesus knows the pain that he is going to face, that he has already faced. You see, the cross from our perspective sometimes can look like defeat. It can look like an obstacle that's insurmountable. But with God, it becomes salvation. Not just for one, but for all of us who are willing. You see, the reality is some of God's greatest victories come through painful processes in our lives. Trusting God does not mean that life is easy. The right road isn't the easy road. Surrender is part of faith. Again, the world looks at surrender as failure. But when you surrender yourself over to God, it really opens up opportunities for us. God can turn suffering into resurrection power. Aren't we all grateful for that today? So here we have 3 instances where they were forced to rely on trusting the bigger picture. They didn't see what that bigger picture necessarily was right in their face, with the exception maybe Jesus. We often judge God's plan by what we see and fail to trust he has that big picture. We worry about what we see. We worry about delays, confusion, pain. We worry about doors that have been closed on us. Doors closed to opportunities that we thought were the right path for us. See, all of these things are attitudes that are fueled by fear. But what we really need to be doing is we need to trust what God sees. To not worry about what we see, but trust what God sees. We need to trust that he has purpose, that there are opportunities for growth through the things that we see and do, that God is going to offer protection. And protection looks a lot different in different situations. And that God is going to prepare us. He's going to give us preparation for the things that we will deal, for those obstacles, those insurmountable obstacles, those red see obstacles in life. See, this is a faith-fueled outlook, which is so much better than a fear-fueled one. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, we read it earlier this morning, but I just want to read it again. It says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. So how do we learn from this? How do we learn from these instances in the Bible? We need to trust God when the picture is incomplete. So in life, we're going to run into so many instances where we just can't see everything. And that's where we need to hand it over to God and trust him. We need to release the need to understand everything. We need to learn to exercise our faith. And we need to believe that God is working behind the scenes. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. And we need to commit to walking by faith and not by sight. Not our will, but his will be done. We can't be missing what's happening on the banks surrounding us because we can't look past the canoe that's sitting in our face. All right. If you would stand with me and let us pray.